I found my voice at 79 years old. Standing in a hospital corridor at 2 in the morning, fluorescent lights humming above me, the smell of antiseptic sharp in my throat. I found my voice right there, after 47 years of silence, and the only person who had ever needed to hear it was lying behind a closed door, 3 minutes dead, his chest finally still after a lifetime of rising and falling next to mine. That is the kind of timing life gives you when you wait too long. I stood in that corridor for I do not know how long. A nurse passed me twice. She asked the second time if I needed anything and I said no, thank you, I am fine, which is what I had been saying for 47 years, and it came out so automatically I almost laughed. Almost. There was no laughter left in me that night. There was only the thing I had finally found, the words, the real ones, the ones I had been folding smaller and smaller for nearly 5 decades, and nowhere left to put them. I am 80 years old. I have been a wife, a mother of 3, a grandmother of 7, a woman who kept a clean house and never raised her voice and always had something warm on the table by 6 o'clock. People in our town called me patient. They called me gentle. They called me a good woman, which I have come to understand is what people call a woman who causes them no inconvenience. I was not patient. I was afraid. There is a difference, and it took me almost 8 decades to understand it clearly enough to say it out loud, which I am doing now because I am 80 years old and I have nothing left to protect, and the truth has been sitting inside my chest so long it has started to feel like a stone I cannot carry anymore. What I am going to tell you is not a love story. Or perhaps it is, but the kind they do not make films about. The kind where 2 people live inside the same 4 walls for 47 years and one of them disappears so slowly that nobody notices, including herself, until one morning she looks in the bathroom mirror and cannot find anyone looking back. I know what you are thinking if you are young. You are thinking, why did she not just speak? Why did she not leave, or fight, or demand? I thought those things too, once, before the years taught me what they teach every woman who loves a man who does not know how to hear her, that speaking and being heard are 2 entirely different things, and when you have tried the first enough times without the second, you eventually stop trying at all. That is what I want to tell you about. Not the silence itself, but what the silence costs. What it takes from you, year by year, so quietly you do not feel it leaving until one day you reach inside yourself for something, an opinion, a want, a simple honest feeling, and find almost nothing there. The kind where 2 people live inside the same 4 walls for 47 years and one of them disappears so slowly that nobody notices, including herself, until one morning she looks in the bathroom mirror and cannot find anyone looking back. I know what you are thinking if you are young. You are thinking, why did she not just speak? Why did she not leave, or fight, or demand? I thought those things too, once, before the years taught me what they teach every woman who loves a man who does not know how to hear her, that speaking and being heard are 2 entirely different things, and when you have tried the first enough times without the second, you eventually stop trying at all. That is what I want to tell you about. Not the silence itself, but what the silence costs. What it takes from you, year by year, so quietly you do not feel it leaving until one day you reach inside yourself for something, an opinion, a want, a simple honest feeling, and find almost nothing there. The kind where 2 people live inside the same 4 walls for 47 years and one of them disappears so slowly that nobody notices, including herself, until one morning she looks in the bathroom mirror and cannot find anyone looking back. I know what you are thinking if you are young. You are thinking, why did she not just speak? Why did she not leave, or fight, or demand? I thought those things too, once, before the years taught me what they teach every woman who loves a man who does not know how to hear her, that speaking and being heard are 2 entirely different things, and when you have tried the first enough times without the second, you eventually stop trying at all. That is what I want to tell you about. Not the silence itself, but what the silence costs. What it takes from you, year by year, so quietly you do not feel it leaving until one day you reach inside yourself for something, an opinion, a want, a simple honest feeling, and find almost nothing there. The first moment I knew, somewhere below the level of words, that something was wrong came 8 months into our marriage. A Tuesday evening in May 1968. I had spent the afternoon writing. I had always written, journals mostly, and sometimes longer things. I had a small wooden desk in the corner of the bedroom and sat at it for 3 hours and wrote something I was proud of. Something that felt true and alive. Robert came home at 6:30. I was still at the desk. He changed out of his work clothes, came into the bedroom, looked at me, and said, "Is dinner not ready?" That was all. 4 words. Not cruel. Not shouted. Simply 4 words that assumed, without question, that whatever I had been doing for 3 hours was of less importance than the fact that it was 6:30 and there was nothing on the stove. I closed my notebook. I went to the kitchen. I made dinner. I never showed him what I had written. I never showed him anything I wrote after that evening. I folded that part of myself up neatly and put it somewhere he would not see it, and I called it compromise, and I did not yet understand that I had just made a decision that would take 47 years to fully pay for. That is the thing about the first small surrender. It does not feel like surrender. It feels like practicality. You do not feel it as a loss because you tell yourself it is temporary. You will come back to it when things are less busy, when the children are older, when life opens up a little and gives you room. Life does not open up. It fills in. Every space you leave empty, something else occupies. And the self you keep postponing, the one at the desk, the one with something to say, waits for a while, and then begins, very quietly, to stop waiting. I did not experience it as a dramatic erosion. I experienced it as Tuesday, then Wednesday, then another year, then another. 3 children born between 1969 and 1974, which I do not regret. My children are the clearest good thing in my life and I would choose them without hesitation in any version of any life. But children gave me something very convenient, somewhere to put all the love and energy and hunger for connection that I was not putting into my marriage. I poured myself into them and told myself that was enough. What I was also doing was disappearing. Slowly, one small capitulation at a time. I stopped writing completely by 1972. I stopped mentioning my opinions about things Robert had already decided. I stopped telling him when something hurt me because the 1 or 2 times I had tried, he had looked at me with blank, uncomfortable patience and said something like, "I don't know what you want me to do about that, Eleanor," and the shame of that response was worse than the original hurt. I learned to need less. Or rather, and this is the distinction that matters, I learned to show less. The needs did not go anywhere. They accumulated quietly, steadily, the way water accumulates behind a dam, invisible from the outside, immense on the inside, and eventually dangerous. By 1975 I had developed a kind of internal doubleness that I lived inside for the rest of my married life. There was the Eleanor that everyone saw, capable, warm, organized, fine. And there was the other one, the one who lay awake at night next to a man she had chosen and felt a loneliness so specific and so total it had its own texture, a hollow pressure behind the sternum, like something that wanted to be said pressing against a chest that had decided never to open. I never told anyone about the second Eleanor. Not because I did not want to, because telling them would have made it real in a way I was not ready for. And because somewhere inside me I still believed that Robert would change. That one morning he would look at me across the breakfast table and actually see me, and something would shift, and the marriage I had imagined at 23 would finally arrive. It never arrived. What arrived instead was more years. More Tuesdays. A man who was not unkind, not unfaithful, not dramatic in his failures, just absent in the way that is hardest to name and hardest to leave, because it gives you nothing solid to point to. He was, by every external measure, a decent man. He simply never once, in 47 years, asked me what I was thinking and waited for the real answer, and I, God help me, never told him without being asked. Let me show you what 47 years of swallowed truth looks like when you break it into pieces. 1971, 4 years of marriage. I had been offered a position helping to edit a local literary journal, unpaid, 2 afternoons a week. The editor had read something I wrote years earlier and remembered it. When he called, I stood in the kitchen with the receiver to my ear and felt something I had not felt in 4 years, a door opening inside my chest. I told Robert that evening, after dinner, after the children were in bed. He listened. Then he said, "Who would watch the children?" Not, "That sounds interesting." Not, "Tell me more." Just the immediate, practical reduction of my excitement to a logistics problem. I said I thought I could arrange something with my mother. He said, "It seems like a lot of disruption for something unpaid." I did not take the position. I called the editor, hung up, and stood in the kitchen washing dishes that were already clean because I needed to do something with my hands. The door that had opened closed again. Within a few weeks I had almost convinced myself it had never been there. Almost. 1979, 12 years of marriage. Our youngest had just started school. For the first time in a decade I had hours in the day that belonged to no one. I tried going back to writing and sat at the desk for 40 minutes staring at a blank page before I got up and cleaned the bathroom instead, because at least that produced a visible result. But I started reading again. Seriously, hungrily. I started keeping notes. I started forming opinions that felt sharp and real and worth saying. One evening I tried to share one with Robert over dinner. I had been reading a novel all week and said, "I've been reading something I'd love to talk to you about, if you're interested." "What kind of something?" he said. "A novel. It's about the way people construct versions of themselves for other people to love, and whether that's a kind of lie or a kind of survival, and I've been thinking about it all week and I have so many." "I don't really read novels," he said. Not unkindly. Just factually. The way you state the weather. He went back to his plate. I never tried to talk to him about what I was reading again. Not in the 36 years that followed. I found other people for that, my friend Vera, my daughter Anna when she was old enough, occasionally strangers at the library. I assembled a collection of conversations I could not have at home, parceled out among different people, none of whom had the whole picture. Robert had the whole picture, technically. He simply never looked at it. 1989, 22 years of marriage. My mother died in February. She died on a Sunday morning and I drove home through gray February light that felt like the sky had also given up on something, and Robert was in the kitchen making tea and said, "How are you doing?" in the tone of a man hoping for a manageable answer. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to sit at that kitchen table and tell him what it had been like to hold my mother's hand while she left, what her breathing had sounded like in the last hour. I felt the old familiar calculation run through me in less than a second. How much of this can he actually hold? What version of this grief is small enough to fit through the gap he is offering? And I said, "I'm all right." It was peaceful at the end. He nodded. He poured the tea. He said, "She had a good life." She did. But that was not what I needed someone to say. What I needed was for someone to sit across from me and say nothing and simply let me be in pieces for a little while without trying to tidy me up. I grieved my mother in the car. In the bath with the door locked. In the garden in the early mornings before anyone else was up. I grieved her in every private space I could find, in installments, alone, the way I had learned to do everything that mattered. That is the year I remember as the year I finished disappearing. Not dramatically. Just, the last of the Eleanor who had something to say went somewhere quiet and pulled the door closed behind her. What remained was functional. Warm, even. A good mother. A reliable neighbor. A woman who always had something on the table by 6 o'clock, but not a woman who was fully there. Not anymore. 1998. 31 years of marriage. Our daughter Anna came to visit that summer. One afternoon, while we were alone in the kitchen, she said out of nowhere, "Are you happy, Mum?" I mean, really. Are you? I was at the sink. My back was to her. The question landed like a stone dropped into still water, the impact, then ring spreading outward, disturbing everything. I stood there with my hands in the water and felt something enormous rise up, all of it at once, the unsaid things, the unopened doors, the grief in the bathtub, the telephone call I had not taken, the notebook I closed in 1968. All of it suddenly right there, behind my eyes and in my throat. Anna waited. And I turned around, and I smiled, and I said, "Of course I am." I have all of you, don't I? She looked at me for a moment with her young, sharp eyes. I thought she was going to push. That she was going to say, "That's not what I asked." She nodded slowly. She went back to what she was doing. And I stood at the sink as the wave receded and thought, next time. I will say it next time. When I am ready. When I have found the right words. There was no next time. Not for another 21 years. And by then it was a hospital corridor at 2 in the morning, and the door I needed to walk through was already closed. Robert had his first heart attack in October 2013. It happened on a Wednesday morning in the garden. I found him sitting against the wall with one hand pressed flat against his chest and a look on his face I had never seen before, something like surprise, as though his own body had said something he had not expected to hear. He came home 6 days later, thinner and quieter, with medications that took me 2 weeks to organize. The doctors said he had been lucky. They looked at me when they said this, at me, the wife, the one who would be doing the caring, and I nodded and said we would do everything right. I want to be honest about something. When I say I cared for him well in those years, I am not saying I did it from fullness. I did it from habit, from duty, from the muscle memory of 46 years of showing up whether or not I had anything left. I had spent too long being the woman who managed. I did not know how to stop managing and simply feel. But something did shift after the heart attack. Robert became, in those years, slightly softer. Not transformed, he remained a quiet, private man who found emotion difficult. But he started, occasionally, to reach for my hand when we sat together. He started saying thank you for things I had always done without acknowledgement. Small things. The kind of things that would have meant everything to me in 1971 or 1979 or 1989, and that arrived now like rain after a drought so long the ground had forgotten how to absorb water. I did not know what to do with his softness. I had organized myself so thoroughly around its absence that its presence confused me. I would feel his hand reach for mine and hold it and feel, nothing. Or not nothing. Something complicated and sad that I could not name. The warmth I had wanted for so long arriving into a place that had closed over and healed scar-like, smooth and numb where it used to be open. I told myself it was enough. That better late than never was a true thing. I told myself this for 4 years. The second heart attack came in January 2019. Severe, the doctors said. Much more serious than the first. They stabilized him and told me the next 24 hours were critical, and that I should go home and rest. I did not go home. I sat in the corridor outside his ward through the afternoon, the evening, and into the night. A nurse brought me tea. I held the cup but do not remember drinking from it. At some point past midnight something happened inside me. I do not have a better word for it than cracking. Not breaking. Breaking implies collapse and noise. This was quieter. The sound a thing makes when it has been held under pressure long enough that the structure finally gives, a clean, almost peaceful split, and then everything held inside suddenly having space to move. 47 years of it. I sat in that plastic chair and felt it all moving, everything I had folded and stored and pressed down, everything I had swallowed at kitchen sinks and in locked bathrooms and in cars and in garden mornings, everything I had almost said to Anna in 1998 and had not said, all of it suddenly loose inside me, rising, and for the first time in 47 years I did not push it back down. And what came out was not anger. I had expected anger, I had been afraid of what was underneath because I assumed it was rage. But it was not rage. It was grief. Simple, enormous, clean grief. Grief for the conversations I had never had, for the notebook I closed in 1968. For my mother's death mourned in installments in locked rooms. For Anna's question in 1998 that I had answered with a smile and 21 more years of silence. For myself. I was grieving for myself. I got up from the plastic chair and walked to the door of his ward and pushed it open. The ward was dim. Robert was in the third bed, nearest the window, awake, eyes open, looking at the ceiling. When I came in he turned his head and looked at me with the quiet, careful look he had always had, the one I had spent 47 years trying to read something warmer into. I pulled a chair to his bedside. I sat down. And then I said it, not all of it, 47 years cannot be said in one sitting. But enough. The true shape of it. I said, Robert. I need to tell you something and I need you to just listen. I don't need you to fix it or make it comfortable. I just need you to hear it. He said nothing. I said, I have been disappearing for most of our marriage. I don't think you knew that. I'm not certain I fully knew it myself until tonight. But I have been, smaller, year by year, quieter, less myself, and I let it happen because every time I tried to be more I felt you pull back, and pulling back hurt less than reaching out and finding nothing there. So I stopped reaching. And I lost things. I lost the writing and the thinking and the wanting. I lost the ability to know what I wanted at all, after a while. I lost myself so gradually that I didn't notice I was gone. The green lines moved on the machine beside him. I'm not telling you this to hurt you. I'm telling you because I have been waiting for the right moment for 47 years and I have finally understood that there is no right moment. There is only this one. He was very still, then he said, in a voice quiet and rough from the tubes they had put in him, I didn't know how to be what you needed. I knew I wasn't enough. I just didn't know what to do about it. That was all. He had known. For 47 years, he had known he was not reaching me, and he had not known what to do about it, and so he had done nothing. I had taken his nothing as evidence that he did not care, when perhaps it had always been a man as lost inside his own limitations as I was inside my silence, both of us waiting for the other to build the bridge, neither of us building it, both of us ending up here, a dim hospital ward, green lines, 1 in the morning, 47 years gone. I held his hand. He let me hold it. He died 4 hours later, just before 6 in the morning, in that particular darkness that has not yet decided to become day. I was in the chair beside him. I did not let go of his hand until it had been cold for a long time. And then I walked out into the corridor, and I stood under the humming fluorescent light, and I finally, had nothing left to swallow. I want to give you a name for what I did to myself across those 47 years. Not staying quiet, that is too innocent. Not sacrificing myself for the marriage, that is too noble. What I did has a more precise name. I practiced the slow erasure of a self I was afraid to defend. Not selflessness. Not patience. Not the dignified endurance of a woman from a particular generation. Those are the stories I told myself, and they were lies. The truth is this, I was afraid. Afraid that if I showed Robert the full size of what I needed, he would find it too large. Afraid that if I said I am not happy, I am disappearing, I need more than this, he would look at me with that blank face and say I don't know what you want me to do about that, Eleanor, and the shame of being too much would be worse than the pain of being too little. So I made myself too little first. I got there before he could. I shrank preemptively, voluntarily, and then spent 47 years being quietly furious at him for not noticing I had done it. That is the dishonesty I have to confess to. Not his. Mine. He was limited. Robert had real and significant limitations in his ability to see me, hear me, meet me where I was. Those limitations were real and they cost me genuinely. But I had a role in what happened to us. The choice I made every single day was silence. And silence is not neutral. Silence is a decision, daily, active, renewable, and every time you make it you are also making yourself smaller, making it easier to be unseen, training the person across from you to expect less because you keep offering less. I trained Robert not to ask. I trained him so well that by the time he might have been ready, in those softer years after the first heart attack, I had nothing left to offer him in return. Even the warmth I had wanted arrived to find the door already closed over and unreachable. We did that together. Both of us, in our different ways, building a marriage in which neither of us was fully present and both of us were, in our different ways, alone. I did not understand this until 1 in the morning in a hospital corridor. Which is far too late to do anything useful with the understanding. So here is what I want to give you. Here is the one question I wish someone had pressed into my hands at 23 and made me promise to ask every day, What am I swallowing right now, and why? Not rhetorically. Specifically, what is the need, the want, the feeling, the truth that you are folding smaller at this exact moment? What is the thing you have decided not to say because the moment is wrong, or because you are afraid of how it will land? Write it down if you have to. Say it out loud in an empty room. Because the things we swallow do not dissolve. They accumulate. They become, over decades, the weight you cannot stand up straight beneath, the thing that finally cracks open in a hospital corridor at 1 in the morning when it is 47 years too late. I am not telling you to be reckless. There is a vast difference between choosing the right moment and waiting for a moment that will never come. I spent 47 years confusing those two things. I called my silence tact. I called it wisdom. I called it knowing when to pick your battles. It was none of those things. It was fear with good manners. And fear with good manners is still fear. It still costs you the same thing in the end. Now I want to speak to you directly. You have already, in the first few minutes of reading this, thought of the thing inside you that you have not said. You know what it is. You have known for longer than you are comfortable admitting. The conversation you do not have does not go away. It lives inside you. It grows. It becomes the distance between you that neither of you can name, the low-grade loneliness of two people in the same house who have stopped fully seeing each other, the grief you carry alone in locked bathrooms because you never found a way to carry it together. The difficult conversation is not the danger. The silence is the danger. You are also telling yourself you are protecting them. I told myself this too. What I was actually protecting was myself, from the risk of being seen and found wanting. From the vulnerability of saying, this is what I need, this is the full size of me, and not knowing whether that would be accepted or turned away. The risk of being seen is not as large as the cost of remaining invisible. I know it does not feel that way. The risk feels enormous and the cost feels manageable because you have been managing it so long it has become invisible, the way the weight of something disappears when you have been carrying it long enough that you have simply reorganized your posture around it. But you are reorganizing your posture around it. Every year of silence changes the shape of you slightly, the way a tree changes shape around a fence built too close. And eventually you cannot remember what shape you were before the fence. What would you say if you knew you were running out of time to say it? Because you are. We all are. The corridor is coming, some version of it, for all of us, some moment when the door closes and you are left standing with the full weight of everything you did not say and nowhere left to put it. Do not wait for the corridor, say it now, while the door is still open. Say it imperfectly. Say it in the wrong words. Say it badly and revise it and say it again. Say it in the kitchen on an ordinary Tuesday evening. Too late means a plastic chair in a hospital corridor. Say it now, while the door is still open. Say it imperfectly. Say it in the wrong words. Say it badly and revise it and say it again. Say it in the kitchen on an ordinary Tuesday evening. Too late means a plastic chair in a hospital corridor. Too late means green lines on a small screen. Too late means holding a hand that is already cooling and finally, at 1 in the morning, saying the true thing into the air of a room where the person who needed to hear it can no longer hear anything at all. That is what too late looks like. I have seen it from very close. There is a desk in my bedroom. It is small, made of dark wood, with a drawer that sticks slightly in damp weather and 2 shallow scratches on the surface from something I no longer remember. I have had it for 58 years. I bought it myself in 1966, the year before I married Robert, with money I had saved from 6 months of working at a solicitor's office. I carried it up 3 flights of stairs to my flat with the help of a neighbor I barely knew, set it in the corner by the window, and sat down at it that same evening and wrote for 2 hours without stopping, the way you write when you are 22 and the world is still entirely open and you have not yet learned to be afraid of taking up space. I brought the desk with me when I married Robert. Never commented on it. For most of those 47 years it held things other than writing, bills, school papers, a sewing basket, a stack of Robert's gardening magazines that had nowhere else to go. But I never got rid of it. Through every house move, every reorganization, every decade in which I told myself I was a different person now with different priorities, I kept the desk. I understand now why. It was the last object I owned that remembered who I had been before I started disappearing. The only thing in the house that held the shape of the Eleanor who sat down in 1966 and was not afraid of anything yet. Getting rid of it would have been the final admission, the last door closed, locked, the key thrown away. So it stayed. Through everything, it stayed. After Robert died, I went home in the early morning light of a January day that was very cold and very pale and completely indifferent to what had just happened. I let myself into the house. I stood in the hallway for a long moment in my coat, the same cups on the draining board, the same coat of his hanging by the door, the same quiet that had always lived in this house but that now had a different quality to it. Heavier, more permanent, the quiet of a place that had become singular where it had always been plural. I went upstairs. I took off my coat. I sat down at the desk. I do not know how long I sat there before I opened the drawer and found a pen and pulled a piece of paper toward me. My hand found the pen. The pen found the paper. And I wrote, not well. Not the way I had written at 22. I wrote badly and slowly, with long pauses between sentences, and some of what I wrote was grief and some was anger and some was the things I had not said even in that dim hospital ward, because 47 years of silence cannot be fully emptied in one conversation, no matter how much you need it to be done. I wrote until the January light through the window had shifted from pale to gray to something approaching white. I wrote until my hand ached and my eyes burned, and when I stopped, I sat in the quiet of the house and thought, not with drama, just quietly and clearly, the way you think something. When you have finally stopped lying to yourself, I should have done this every day. Every single day, for 53 years, I should have sat at this desk and written down what was true. I should have kept the Eleanor who was here in 1966 present and alive and loud enough to be heard, by Robert, by my children, by myself most of all. I did not do that. I let the sewing basket sit on her desk and the gardening magazines pile up around her and told myself there would be time later. Life did not open up. I want to leave you with one image. Not an instruction. Just an image you can carry. A woman of 22, in a flat on the 3rd floor, a January evening outside the window, a desk she has just carried up 3 flights of stairs. She sits down. She picks up her pen. She is not afraid of anything yet. She just knows that she has something inside her worth putting down, and that the act of putting it down is the most important thing she can do with this particular evening, with this particular version of herself that is still whole and open and entirely sure that she deserves to take up space. That woman is still inside me. I found her again, at 80, at a desk that waited 53 years for me to come back to it. I am asking you not to make her wait that long. She is inside you too. Right now, in this ordinary moment, on this unremarkable day, she does not need a hospital corridor to find her voice. She does not need 47 years of accumulated silence pressing her finally, unbearably open. She needs you to sit down at the desk. She needs you to pick up the pen. She needs you to say the true thing now, imperfectly, incompletely, in the wrong words, on a Tuesday, while there is still someone there to hear it. While there is still time to be heard,